Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me this Monday evening. Hope you all had a good start of the week. Just let me know in the chat if you can hear me okay. Right? That's always good to know. Right, this way. So, what? Anyways, hi. Okay, so there's an awful lot happening with this puberty blockers clinical trial. Patty says, I can hear loud and clear. Very good. Right, I was trying to adjust my hair, but I don't know. Sorry, I'm looking at my mirror image, so I don't know which hand to use. Anyways, very important. Right, so Friday, it was announced that, hello, Natalie, nice to see you. Friday, it was announced that the clinical trial for the puberty blockers, the NHS Pathways trial, has been paused, which is good news to all of us who've been pushing back against this for so long now. It just seems to go on and on and on and on and on. So this is good. It's just a pause. Will it be a reversible pause? We'll have to wait and see. So why did that happen? It was basically the medicine regulator in the UK that stepped in, the MHRA, and raised safety concerns and has now requested the team that's going to carry out the trial at King's College to amend the study protocol to better reflect the risks to children. And I think that surely should be enough of a red flag in itself. Risks to children. Why do it? So it's now going to meet, the MHRA is now going to meet with the clinicians at King's College to address these various issues. So until then, it's on hold. And West Streeting has just confirmed that today that he will update the House of Commons about this. Right, let me just have a look at the chat. So this is good news. But then, and that was Friday evening, Hilary Cass responded in an article in The Observer, and she did a radio interview with a New Zealand radio station. And the thing she said in that interview really made me go like, what the hell? What's wrong with this woman? And like even on the thumbnail for this live stream, I said, has Cass gone crackers? And I thought, oh, maybe that's a bit rude or mean. But I'm really wondering that because of the stuff that she's saying. And I'm like, how can you, as the person who has worked on this, on your review and your report for 4 years, come out with those kind of statements? So we'll have a look at those. But first, let's just go over the pushback against this, because that I think is such a good sign. And imagine 5 years ago, we wouldn't have seen this level of pushback. So I think that's a really good thing that's come out of this. Because it was initially announced in November last year that the trial would definitely go ahead. And I think a lot of us, when the Cass review first came out, there was so much good stuff in there that we were like, okay, this is definitely a good thing. And we're on the right path. Even though quite a few people were like, especially, I have to give her credit again, Kelly J, Posey Parker, straight away went, this report is full of gender woo. And obviously the first paragraph about it was, oh, this is not about validating or invalidating trans identities, blah, 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 blah. Not good. Roly poly. Thank you so much for your £4.99, and Cass talks out of her ass. Yeah, should have done that on the thumbnail instead. Thank you very much, Mr. Roly Poly. Changeling is asking, is she trying to be fair or nice or open-minded? Well, from those comments that she made this weekend, I think she just doesn't get it. I don't think she's even trying to be fair-minded. I think she just doesn't get it, and she's been foiled by the trans activists, because there was one particular comment she made about that makes that very clear. And also, ever since she got into the House of Lords, she talked about cisgender people. She talks about trans kids as if these are real things, and they're not. So Dusty just says the review talked about sex assigned at birth. Exactly, it's all that gender woo. So then in November, I'm going to try and stay on track. In November, it was announced that the trial would go ahead, right? Because also the review came out. There was a lot of good stuff in there. Obviously, she recommended a trial, but there were 32 recommendations, and other recommendations that surely you would do before a trial, like the data linkage study, because 2,000 kids have already been put on the blockers. Where are they? What happened to them? And how are they doing? And, you know, they don't seem to be pushing for that. Why can't they put a few million into getting those answers? Anyways, so that announcement was made in November. Then there was a lot of pushback. So there was a big protest in December, which had MPs from across the political spectrum speaking, which was fantastic. That was organized by Venice Ellen, who did a fantastic job. Claire Fox was the MC, and we had Rosie Duffield speaking as an independent. We had Jonathan Hinder from the Labour Party. We had, what's his name? He's just launched Restore Britain, something low. He was there, and someone from Reform. Then there was a protest in Manchester in January. Rosie Duffield then put together a letter that was signed by loads of MPs across the political spectrum as well. Kenny Badenoch wrote a letter, which was like an official opposition party letter. And then, of course, James Esses and Kira Bell and Bayswater Support, they launched legal action. They've basically filed papers at the High Court to challenge the decision for this to go ahead. Natalie, thank you very much for your £5. And you're saying a little contribution, waiting for payday. Very much appreciated. Thank you. Now, and James Esses, he started that petition that was signed by 144,000 signatures, which is amazing. And on the back of that, there's now going to be a debate in Westminster Hall. That's going to be on the 9th of March. The problem with that is that's going to be chaired by a bloke from Jamie Stone from the Lib Dems, who is a self-confessed trans activist, and he's all about trans rights and human rights, and he supports self-ID. So is he the best person to chair it? And why did they pick him of all people? Anyways. And somebody says, hoi uit Australië. I was going to say goeie-avond, which is good evening, but for you it'll be morning, so goeiemorgen. Okie dokie. Now, also there was a bunch of psychiatrists who've written an open letter. And following the legal action filed by Kira Bell, James Esses, and Bayswater Support, Northern Ireland has now pulled out of this trial. So that's good, because they want to wait for the outcome of the legal action. Now, whether that legal action can actually stop the trial, I don't know. I don't think it has that sort of power, but it's about exposing the decision-making that went into even approving this trial, from what I understand. Okay. So the MHRA had concerns about the clinical trial. It's kind of like the 11th hour, right? So why did they wait so long? Because actually they were involved in approving the clinical trial. But I guess they've had a bit of a closer look, and they basically said the following. One of the key concerns was around infertility. And they said that neither the protocol and nor the patient information sheets provided sufficient information on the fertility risks. It explicitly recognized the sterilizing effect of puberty blockers once followed by cross-sex hormones. And I think a lot of us, we've been banging on about this for years, that you're basically putting them on a sterilizing pathway. And how can a child possibly consent to these things, or even entertain a process, navigate these questions about, fertility? Yeah, no. What do you think? Do you want children? I mean, most of us say no as teens. You don't know these kind of things until you get a bit older, right? And certain, you're in a different stage of life and all that kind of stuff. How can you expect a 12-year-old or even a 10-year-old, because they were going to have kids as young as 10, even 8? How can you expect them to sort of even get their heads around a question like that, or what it means and entails? Anyways, so the MHRA recognized this, because also if you're going to put children on a sterilizing pathway, they're going to lose their fertility. If you then want to put something in place to preserve their fertility, that isn't possible if you block the puberty right away, because the gametes won't have a chance to mature. So how can you offer any solutions for that? And even Marcy Bowers, the former president of WPATH, he was pushing himself for puberty not to be started at 10 stage 2, so that these kids could at least go through some sort of puberty. And that was more in relation to them being able to, later in life, at least have the ability to experience an orgasm. Because if you do that at 10 stage 2 and then cross-sex hormones, then that goes. And again, how can a child go? Oh my God, I just feel like I'm repeating myself, but the whole thing is just so bonkers. Fluffy Lion is in the house. Thank you so much for your £10. I'm going to give that a heart. There you go. Thank you very much. Right. So, yeah. And also, in terms of with the fertility and the gametes, even if you let the gametes mature a little bit, retrieval is going to be pretty tough, particularly for females, for the girls, right? I know adults who've gone through that process of egg retrieval, and it's not easy on the body. It's hard, and also psychologically, it's very stressful. So why they would do that to I don't know, 13, 14-year-old girls is absolutely mad. Fried chicken, oh, that makes me hungry. Says they want to sell them false hope of IVF or surrogacy or some bullshit magical pill after destroying their fertility. It's the whole thing just doesn't make any sense. It's cruel. I just think it's absolutely cruel. Absolutely cruel. So here was a comment from Emma Hilton, evolutionary biologist and fantastic turf. She said, think about what IVF looks like in a healthy woman. The injections, the retrievals, the risks. We are supposed to pretend that that's all right for a 10-year-old girl who isn't even maturing eggs yet. Like, these are very basic, simple, common sense questions. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure out that there's something completely wrong with this. She says you cannot wave away the loss of future fertility with vague assurances about preservation. Exactly. It's like everything just gets minimized, and you can't say this is reasonable mitigation. You can't block puberty while preserving fertility. So like kids can't even understand those options. Another concern that let me just check, MHRA, that the MHRA had was that some of these kids, they can obviously, if they start early, they could be on it for years. With the idea that at 16 they'll go on to cross-sex hormones. So this is already a very clear part of the pathway that they envision for some of these kids that go onto these blockers. They will go on to the cross-sex hormones. Like how many, we don't know, but we do know that most of the kids that go on blockers, 95 to 98% go on to the cross-sex hormones. So now the MHRA says, if a kid starts, say, at 10 and then they're on the blockers for 2 years, then they'd have to wait 4 years before going on the cross-sex hormones, and they've got concerns about that's too long or something. And those 4 years, what happens during those 4 years? It's either therapy or they just keep them on the blockers. That's also a possibility with this trial. So, but they shouldn't be on them for too long, because when women are on it for endometriosis, there's limits. They're not going to keep them on it for like 2 or 4 years. And especially in developing bodies, we know. Oh, why do we have to explain this? It just drives me nuts. Okay. The other concern was the trial measurement tool. This is basically a questionnaire. It's just a questionnaire about their well-being. Like, are you happy this week? Were you feeling stressed this week? How does that measure the effects of the drugs on their bodies? Plus, there's also this thing that there's going to be 2 groups, right, on the clinical trial. One that gets the drugs straight away, and the other half only gets it after a year. So they have to wait for a year. And the kids that will go on this trial, if it happens, they're all going to be desperate for them. So that means that the second group is just going to be even more desperate and have a whole year of, why couldn't I get the drugs first? Why couldn't I get the blockers? So of course they're going to be stressed out. Why sell them this lie in the first place, that somehow you can choose what developmental path you go down? It is not a choice. And all they're doing is lying to these kids. Just stop with the lies. I want to swear. I want to swear. I so want to swear. So yeah, a stupid little questionnaire about quality of life. What's that going to tell us? Bone health. One of the other concerns raised by, I keep thinking I'm going to get these letters wrong. MHRA, the MHRA, not the YMCA, the MHRA. Bone health, okay? Concerns about negative impact on both health. They said that the treatment with triptorelin, which is the drugs that they use, beyond 12 months will result in persistent and potentially permanent bone structural damage. Another massive red flag. And Cass, in her own review, she also acknowledged that bone health is compromised with reduced bone mineral density and even height gain, potentially lagging behind, their peers. So she also stated that brain maturation may be temporarily or permanently disrupted. There was another report, the BMJ report in 2024. They also mentioned the neurodevelopmental risks, like why mess with their brains? And Cass just goes, oh, well, we don't know if it's going to benefit or harm anyone. We just don't know. Hand on my heart, I can't give you the answer, right? That's one of the things that she said in her interview in the New Zealand radio channel, which is just like, how can you even say these things when we know from animal studies that this happens, and we know from different case studies. In Sweden, there was that case of this girl, well, she went by Leo, who had bone fractures in her spine from these drugs. It's like, how can you say, oh, we don't know if it harms anyone? You've written the bloody report. Peppermint Patty, thank you very much for your £20. And you're saying, what about the 9,000 kids from JIDS? No follow-up. Yeah, we'll get to that. I did mention it earlier, but we'll get to that in a bit. 9,000 kids went through JIDS, 2,000 on the blockers. Follow them up. They're like, oh, it's too difficult. Right. So the MHRA, what changes are they asking for? Because they're going to be meeting with the King's College team this week, right? And what are they saying that they want? This is an interesting one. So they want to increase the minimum age of participants to 14 because of the fertility concerns. Okay? Because especially girls will have gone through most of their puberty by then. For boys, obviously, it starts a bit later. The idea is that then the gametes will have matured enough to do gamete retrieval, which, again, as I said earlier, for girls, it's a nightmare. Like, why would you put teenage girls through that? For boys, it's a bit easier. And who knows? No, never mind. Okay. They also want to change the criteria so that children will be withdrawn from the trial if problems with their bones are identified after 12 months. If there's a clinically significant decline in bone mass density, or if they have any vertebral fractures. Do they, like, this is where I just wonder, what happened to the ethics about this? Are you seriously going to wait for someone to have fractures in their vertebrae before you pull them off a trial? And they would withdraw any female who experiences more than 2 weeks of vaginal bleeding, right? But if you're a child, if you're a girl who's on this trial and you've got it in your head that this is what you want, and maybe your parents have been fighting to get you on that trial, you're on it. If you then notice problems, do you really think they're going to say, oh, I've got issues here? No, because then they know they will be taken off the trial. So they'll try to hide that as much as they can. Right. The other thing is they would withdraw participants who show adverse functional MRI changes detected at any time. Right. So they're going to wait for them to have fractures in the vertebrae. They're going to wait for them to bleed, and they're going to wait for them to have cognitive impairment. But hey, it's ethical. Sorry, it just drives me nuts. So Wes has confirmed it's paused. He said he's going to update the House, as in the House of Commons. And that once the MHRA team has spoken to the clinicians at King's College, he's then going to review the outcomes and take clinical advice. You know, this is his usual line. Everything's about the clinical advice, but like, what clinicians has he listened to? Which clinicians has he not listened to? I don't think he's ever met with Sue Evans and Marcus Evans, who've been at the forefront of this. Sue since 2004. Has he ever met with them? And this is just another way of him saying, hands clean, you know, it's got nothing, it's not my decision. It's all just about the clinical evidence, like, use your brain. It's only the other week. It was only last week, I think, that Cass herself said on an interview, like on TV, that most of these kids will just grow up to be gay. Like, if you know that, then why would you even go ahead with any of this? And with Wes, I'm just like, I want him to be much more hands-on, grow some balls, you know, which obviously kids on the blockers won't do. And, you know, be a leader and just say, no, not this. Like, there's 32 other recommendations in the Cass review. Let's prioritize a couple of others. And I want to know why that MHRA signed it off before, and now they're like, Also, the whole ethical approval apparently was a real shambles. Maya Forstetter did a really good article about that, so I recommend you look that up. I don't know if it was for the... Let's just look that up while we're all together here online. Maya Forstetter, ethics, puberty, blockers, clinical trial. Was it the Critic? Ah, yes. It's called Ethics, What Ethics? Let me see if I can just drop that in the chat, because that's a really good piece. Let me just drop it in there. Yes. Right. So actually, the people that were involved in making it, there was like a committee put together, and then, but there was only like a little subcommittee. It was maybe even only 3 people that were actually involved in it, which again is just nuts. So what are the alternatives? And then we'll get to Cass, right, and her comments. stop the trial, spend the money on mental health services. It's nearly £11 million. Mental health is seriously suffering, so that could be put to good use. Here's a point that Marcus Evans, who used to be at the Tavistock, this is one thing he says. Most of these young people struggle with the developmental tasks of forming a mind and identity of their own. That requires time, containment, and thoughtful psychological work, not premature medical pathways. And Sue Evans said, Marcus and I wrote a 6-page letter to West Streeting on November the 24th. We would like to meet with him, but we have not heard anything about it. I worked in JIDS. I was the person who started the Kirabel Judicial Review. We have both been raising child safeguarding concerns in this area for over 20 years. Perhaps we have something to contribute. Greenham says, developing an adult mind is what puberty is for. That's what it does. Duh. Yeah. And look, puberty is difficult, particularly for girls. It's called growing pains for a reason. We need to completely take this option off the table of, oh, you can stop puberty or pick and choose. It's nuts. Now, Preet Kaur Gill, she's an MP. She's going to be meeting with West Streeting and clinicians who have raised concerns and feel like their voices aren't being heard. And she says if risks cannot be clearly quantified, you do not lower the safeguards, you strengthen them. Hallelujah. I mean, it's common sense. Okay, and also Claire Coutinho, she's an MP, and she's asking, why did Wes need a regulator to step in? Well, that's because he's a coward. There, I said it. Okay, and he said himself in the past that he was uncomfortable with the trial, but he's also said he was uncomfortable when he was speaking to, kids who think they're trans and their families. He just feels uncomfortable about everything all the time, it seems. He just needs to grow a spine. And this gives him a perfect off-ramp, right? So I was wondering, maybe he'll take this as an off-ramp. And then I think, but it's already gone way too far. Why did he let it get this far, right? With an nearly £11 million budget approved and a whole protocol put in place. The other thing, by the way, is how they've sort of moved the Overton window, right? The Cass review was all about looking at gender dysphoria. Now, whether that's a legit diagnosis is a whole other discussion. Excuse me. But the clinical trial does not talk about gender dysphoria. It talks about gender incongruence, which is a watered down version of gender dysphoria, because it means you don't have to actually have any distress. You just have a strong desire to be the sex that you are not, but you don't have to have any distress about it. Like, why would they put kids on this type of trial if they don't even feel distressed? Anyways. Sorry, it's just... Emma Hilton then raised another point. So the MHRA, they're saying, let's have a minimum age of 14. So that means you only get kids on it, teens between 14 and 16. And she says it's actually quite normal to do that, to have what she calls a graded approach. You don't just start with a big group, you start with a subgroup. And if you start with 14 to 16, she's not saying do the trial because she's against the trial, but she was just explaining that typically you would have what she calls a graded approach. So the 14 to 16-year-olds first, and then you consider if it's appropriate for younger kids to test the water, right? Cass then rejected that as really, really flawed. if you claim that 14 to 16-year-olds wouldn't benefit, it's like she's suggesting the 14 to 16-year-olds wouldn't benefit. But if that's what you think, then why have 14 to 16-year-olds on the trial in the first place? And just a reminder, Kira Bell, she started on the blockers at 16, and she was very clear about the harms that caused her. She was talking a lot about brain fog, the hot flushes, and she said they were so awful, she couldn't wait to get onto cross-sex hormones, testosterone in her case. So that's another side effect of these blockers. If you get all these side effects, then you just want to get off them and move on to the cross-sex hormone. So that then just encourages the demand for that. It's like they're just messing with these kids. It's like whatever they do, they mess them up. And how do they assess who is likely to benefit anyway? Because we still don't have a tool to know which ones of these kids will persist with their distress and which ones won't. Because it doesn't exist. Right. So this whole trial is illogical for the following reasons. We know that these blockers don't give these kids time to think. They just lock them in. And they become overly fixated on, this is it, this is my magic pill, this is the cure, I must have this. And not give them 2 years of therapy, minimum. And stop providing these kids, as I said earlier, with this medical pathway that is based on a lie at the end of the day. And also, with that Supreme Court ruling last year, they're not even, they might try to sex mimic as hard as they can as teens. But once they're adults, the Supreme Court ruling means they'll never get the actual full legal recognition as the sex they want to be. So why would you put kids down a medical path when they will not even be recognized as what it is that they want? Like, again, I just think that's cruel. Oh, Rusty Cole says they all really need to listen to Quentin Crisp. I saw that clip by Quentin Crisp yesterday and I saved it. So Quentin Crisp, gay icon, famously, for want of better words, an effeminate homosexual man. And he was interviewed. There was a clip going around. I don't know if it was from the 70s, possibly, where he just said, look, the best I will always be male. The best I can be is sort of like an effeminate man, but that's it. I'll have to watch it again to get his actual words. But the principle was, accept your sex and be who you are. Duh. There's certain things that you simply can't choose. And Greenham says, legal recognition or not, the public aren't fooled by this. Well, that's the other thing. You'll never be a real woman or a man. At best, you only ever get patronized and pandered to. Very true. Yeah, because even if they had the full legal recognition, doesn't mean the rest of society can't tell or has to go along with it. Right, other illogical thing. Cass was like, we need a proper scientific trial to plug the evidence gaps. But this trial is not going to plug the evidence gaps. Because they only follow them for 2 years. Whereas what we need is long-term data. That's not long-term, so it's not even going to give us what we want. So what's the point? There is pressure coming from somewhere, right? Some people are pushing for this, despite all of these illogical things. Also, if we need to take a holistic view, that was her main thing one of her main things in the Cass review. We need to look at these kids as whole little human beings, not just through the gender lens. Why then have gender specialist hubs? Because if you send someone to a gender hub, then it centers all the fucking gender stuff. None of this makes sense. And basically, there's an account on X, one of my favorite accounts on X, Progressive Misogyny, who summed the trial logic up like this. So, are you testing a new treatment? No, we've already given it to 2,000 kids. What happened to them? No idea. So, will this research see if it works? No. So, what are the alternatives? We've already mentioned it, and Dr. David Bell, also previously from the Tavistock, and he wrote that first report where he spoke to whistleblowers, and that kind of got buried. He's talking about a naturalistic study, which is what we know as the data linkage study. So there were 2,000 kids on blockers. Most of them went to the adult clinics. The adult clinics refused to give data. Most of them, I think only one said, all right then. But then there was a court ruling that said that they had to provide it. So do the study, follow them up. And I guess one of the criticisms, or one of the reasons not to do that, was, well, they don't have the same baseline. Do we need that? Isn't there a wealth of information that we can glean from following up with these people? And come on, inducing because we're talking about healthy bodies here that are doing exactly what they need to be doing, going through puberty. So inducing hardcore drugs into healthy young bodies, developing bodies, when there is a very reasonable reason that these drugs will induce harms like osteoporosis or infertility and cognitive functioning impairment. I just can't see how anyone can say that's ethical. Also, some people in the chat talking about Top of the Pops. How did that happen? Okay, so Cass. I couldn't believe it when she said these things. So there were comments from her in an article in The Observer, where she basically said she was very disappointed that the trial had been paused by the MHRA. And she said they didn't offer any new evidence. She said maybe they have valid points, but they didn't make it in a convincing way in the letter. They didn't link any resources or studies or whatever. There was no new evidence. And she believes it was politically driven rather than driven by the science, even though the concerns MHRA raised were all about physical things, like bone health. That's about science, right? And I think it's ironic that Hilary Cass is playing that card. It's political, not scientific, when the whole trans movement is political, not scientific. When the whole reason the Tavistock Jizz started putting kids on the blockers was, well, initially they wanted to replicate that study in the Netherlands, which was the foundation of the Dutch protocol. But then they lowered the age that they would give these out at without evidence. That was politically driven. That Jizz was ideologically captured, which is something that Cass pointed out in her review. And now she's trying to sort of say that, no, it's the other side is political. What? And she had some criticism, especially for the gender critical side. It's like, okay, what's going on here? And she said in The Observer, oh, the meeting between the MHRA and the clinical team at King's College, they just need to iron out some technical details. Like we're talking about the fertility of 220 kids here, and you think that you just minimize that as technical details that need to be ironed out. Like, I'm like, sorry, what the hell is wrong with this woman? Like, doesn't she have any sort of she's got incredible credentials as a pediatric expert, and she comes out with stuff like this. It's like, what? Miriam de Graaf, thank you so much for your 22 euros. and you say, thank you for keeping us informed. I was going to say my pleasure, but that's frustrating. Okay, and then I listened to her being interviewed on this New Zealand radio channel. New Zealand as a country is completely captured. The media is totally captured. And the questions were very much about, pushing the trend side of things. I think the journalist was trying to be neutral, but she wasn't. So the key phrase that Cass kept using, and that was, we're in equipoise. We don't know if they're good or bad. And I'm like, with everything that we know, that they're bad. First of all, they're really hardcore powerful drugs. It's not like a multivitamin. The potential harms they can cause, and you would induce those harms in developing healthy bodies. That in itself should be enough to go, what? No. Then she says, we don't know of anyone who has benefited or anyone who has been harmed. We're in equipoise. We're in equipoise. We don't know. We don't know. She actually said, literally, I can put my hand on my heart and say, I genuinely don't know the answer. How can you have done this research for 4 years and come out with a bland statement like that? And again, it's because, like the Cass review didn't address the whole point that there's no such thing as a trans child. And again, she's not looking at that now. Then the interviewer said, there are people who are saying that this trial shouldn't be happening at all. That's interesting, isn't it? And Cass just went, no, as if she can't think of any valid reasons why there shouldn't be a trial. Okay, and then she said this, we don't know if young people benefit from this. When looked at a whole group, there was no difference. Right, so this is true, right? So you're looking at the whole, this is from the Tavistock early intervention study. When you looked at the whole group, there was basically no change. But if you look at, there were like 3 subgroups. So for some, there was, sorry, I'm just checking what I've written. Okay, so for some that were on the early intervention study, they found that there were some small improvements, but others had small deteriorations, and others had no change at all. So that's why the overall thing was no change. And Cass said we could have produced these results simply by with a placebo. She said would have given us the same results. And then she says we need a proper scientific process, as if this is it, like just like that end questionnaire that these kids have to fill out, as if that's a proper scientific process. Then the interviewer goes, what about Ozempic? Some people go on Ozempic. What? That would only have been a good comparator if they were giving Ozempic to anorexics. I don't know how these people can ask these questions and think it's a good question. And then the interviewer went, are you happy for politicians to be making medical decisions? Why do you think there's a Secretary of Health? And then Cass went, oh, culture war this, culture war that. And it's like, this is a huge thing where the rights of women and girls, the rights of lesbians, gays, and bisexuals are completely upended. And we're transing these kids, we're sterilizing a whole bunch of kids for the sake of some stupid bonkers ideology, and she passes it off as just a culture war. I can't believe that. And then she mentioned something about, ridiculously binary positions. She also said, and I just really, oh God, I don't have any faith in this woman left. She said, for some children, the only option will be medical transition. Right? She put that in her report as well. For some children, the only option will be medical transition. Why? Why? What do you base that on? It's ridiculous. What, they can't live without being sterilized? They can't live without having body parts chopped off? It's like she's pushing that life-saving care right there. We need to get rid of all that nonsense. Okay, but here's the thing that made me go, okay, there you go. That explains it. So this is Hilary Cass, and this is verbatim. We consulted absolutely regularly with the trans community and clinicians working in gender services, right, as part of the Cass review. We spoke more often to our trans advocacy groups than any other stakeholder. And there you have it. Did she speak to the LGBT Alliance? No. Did she speak to lesbian groups? No. Did she speak to the Gay Men's Network? No. Did she speak to the trans groups? Every 4 to 6 weeks. Then she said this: we knew when things were getting tough, when Brianna Jai, I'd never know how to pronounce that surname, was killed, and we knew how traumatizing that was for the trans community. So we were really connected. How is that relevant? It was awful. It was awful what happened to that guy. How is that relevant for decision making about whether you drug kids out of puberty? It's like so often with these people, they simply know one person, right, who's trans and who's gone through some stuff. They just know the one, and they base everything on that. She went on to say, so we were really connected. We had focus groups. We had about 18 focus groups with young people. We spoke to clinicians. We also spoke to clinicians who are expert in adolescent medicine, in autism, in cognitive development, and other issues that challenge teenagers. So she did speak to lots about this. And yes, she's all about, or not maybe all about, but so focused on the trans side of it. I think she's just been foiled, basically. And they've got, trans groups have her in the palm of their hand. That's my take on it. You might have another take. Let me know in the chat or in the comments. But her whole thing that for some kids, this is the only way that they can possibly go through life is ridiculous. And especially her having spoken to experts in adolescent medicine, in autism, in cognitive development, it's like, where is the, I don't understand the cognitive dissonance. And I think she needs to have her own, we need to have our own word for her level of cognitive dissonance, which is cognitive cassonance. There you go. Then the interviewer asked, how can adults support a child who is questioning their gender identity? Can we just completely, first of all, debunk the whole notion of gender identity? Because it's just based on regressive sexist stereotypes. So how can an adult support a child who is distressed because of sexist stereotypes? You explain to them that these sexist stereotypes, you just give them the middle finger. You don't let them rule your life, let alone have you medicalize yourself for life. Oh, and then Cass's answer I thought was revealing. So I've just lost all respect for her. She said, it's really important not to be challenging young people. Why not? That's exactly what we need to do in a loving, kind, nice, supportive way. They absolutely need challenging. A boy says, I think I'm a girl. No, you're not. The question is, why does the boy think that? Why does he process it that way? Why does he frame it that way? A boy can't feel like a girl because girl is not a feeling. Duh. And then Cass says, we need to try to understand and accept their perspective. No, we don't have to accept their perspective at all. They're children. As the adults, it's up to us to say to them, you're wrong. No. We need to think outside the box. How is she thinking outside the box? if she says that for some children, this is the only way. So I've not been looking at the chat because I'm a bit pissed off with it all. So just to sum up some of all the problems that haven't been... Greenham just says, no, you didn't do the washing up, so no estrogen for you tonight. And it's rich, isn't it? Saying think outside the box. When the whole point of these blockers is to put them in a box. Is to say to the boy, you can be a girl, this is what you need. To the girl, you can be a boy, this is what you need. They're about medically inducing these fucking boxes. How dare she, in an interview, go, oh, think outside the box. Trans is all about boxes. Anyways, that's where we are. That's where we are. So, meetings this week between the MHRA and the clinicians. I'm sure these clinicians are so gung-ho about going forward with this, moving forward with this. They might make some concessions just to get it started again. But then they'll try to broaden it because, and what sort of people are these clinicians? Right? If they feel it's right to do this to children, what kind of people are these? They should not be allowed anywhere near children. So what I would like to see. Are we going live? Okay, so I'm not quite sure what happened. It just suddenly disappeared, but I think we're still going. Oh, Firecat, thank you very much for your £5. And you're saying thank you for all you're doing to raise awareness on this topic. You know what? This is just, it's so frustrating that we have to keep doing this. The first video I made about this was November 2020. Can you believe that? But we got to keep going. We got to keep going. So what was the last thing that I said? I really hope that the continued pushback is gonna make sure that this trial never happens. It should never happen. So that's what I think. What do you guys think? We've got the legal action. We've got the Westminster whole debate. This is not going to go away. They'll try and come up with all sorts of excuses to keep it going or to get it started again. But I'm just really hoping that with all the pushback that is building up, that they will pull the plug, and that West Streeting, even in his sort of lily-livered way, can go, oh, well, clinical evidence, yeah, it's not good enough. And that the clinicians who are against this will be given much more of a voice. And I want to see resignations, and I want to see sackings, and especially the people who approved the ethical side of this. Bonkers. Righty-ho. So, on that note, because I've been going for nearly an hour, let me know if you've got any questions in the chat. So Jojo Puli asks, what was the thing that caused the pause? It was the medicine regulator in the UK called the MHRA. So even though initially they approved it in principle, they had a closer look at it and they went, whoa, we've got concerns about risks and safety for these kids. Hello, what's going on? Can we talk? And that was probably because of the legal action by James Esses, Kira Bell, and Bayswater's support group. So they went to the High Court and they actually lodged papers to start a legal challenge. So I think that's when the MHRA went, ooh, maybe we should have a closer look at this. Hang on, this is fucked up. Okay, let's pause it now. Joseph says, I have a link for you, Menno. It won't work here. What is the link? As in, don't post it, but just tell me what it is and I can find it and maybe post it myself. YouTube doesn't like it if you post any links outside to links that are outside of YouTube. But or Joseph, just tell us what the article is, what the title is, and the author, and then we can Google it ourselves. So yeah, everyone, thanks for joining me this evening, and for all of you who've pushed back, thank you for that, because we got to keep the pressure up. I've been working on an interview with a local councillor who used to be a Labour Party councillor, and now she's moved to Reform, right? She was an independent for a while, and then she moved to Reform. So some people are like, Reform. But it's a very interesting interview. So what do you think? Shall I get that live on Thursday, or would you prefer it on Friday? It's a long interview. It's about an hour and 40 minutes. But I think it's important to give the bigger picture of, her name is Mandy, of why she got involved, first of all, in politics. She knows what it's like to need single-sex safe accommodation, because as she fell pregnant at 16, she had her first child at 16, and then she was in single-sex accommodation for vulnerable young women. So she was in there with her baby, and ever since she, women's rights have been very important for her to champion. And just see, you say you met Mandy at the trial at the Manchester Stop the Trial demo. Yeah, that's her. So you're saying Friday. Right, I'll do that Friday. So I've done the raw sort of editing. So now I'm going to add in lots of little clips from a protest that she organized and things that we refer to in the conversation. So that always takes a while. Wendy asks, Mandy Claire, you're interviewing her? The interview is done, right? I interviewed her not last Sunday, but the week before, because I went up to Chester twice in 1 week. I might do a live stream about that, because I was speaking to the council. Mandy put forward 3 motions, and I was speaking in support of all of them, and that was such a pantomime. It was bizarre to see that unfold in front of my eyes, how captured local councils work, and the way they try to bully her in the chamber, and call her names and tell her to sit down when she spoke. It was absolutely ridiculous. So the interview gives Mandy a chance to really get her story out there. All the bullying and the intimidation that she's experienced. She was arrested. She was put in a cell. She was assaulted with a big, massive dildo. I mean, it sounds funny, but it wasn't. She was being surrounded by like 40 people at a Pride event, where she basically noticed the drag queen in front of children making rather inappropriate jokes. So she said something about it. Then the drag queen made it sound like she was a homophobic woman. And then about 40 people started surrounding her and her friends. There were just 4 of them, and then 40 people around them. Suddenly she gets struck on the head from behind. So she reached out to grab whatever it was to, disarm that person. And suddenly she's got a massive big dildo in her hand. So it's just it's like, never a dull moment in the gender wars. So we had a good chat, and I asked her some quite pointed questions about reform, and she was happy to answer them. So I'll do it Friday, because lots of you said Friday, so we'll do Friday. Excellent. So that's going to be ready for Friday. And that's it from me. Pop the kettle on, love says sterilize your hands after that one. It's just bonkers. And those charges were only dropped. They only dropped the charge because she was in a cell, and then as they released her, that's when they actually charged her. And it took them 6 months to drop the charges. So, it's that whole, the process is the punishment thing. So that will be up on Friday. So look out for that one. And that's it for me. Thank you for joining me. Oh, no, I needed to say this. So on the 9th of March, that's when there's going to be that Westminster Hall debate about the petition, chaired by the TRA guy. But the 10th of March, there's going to be a mass lobbying day against this trial. So that's organized by Sex Matters and the LGBT Alliance. Maybe there's others involved in that as well, but check it on the Sex Matters website or the LGBT Alliance website, and I'm sure they've put it in their newsletters as well. Or on Twitter, on X, have a look at Venice Allen's account because she talks about this a lot. So I think you need to register for that, or you can. I'm not sure if you can just show up, but the idea is it's a mass lobbying day. You can speak to your local MP. So I'll be doing that. Roly Poly says, who will buy Minnow a KFC? Actually, I have chicken ready to go. I was going to have it before the stream, but I ran out of time. So I've got roast chicken with stuffing and some pork sausages, green beans, and I had to have my chips. Sorry, they've gone cold now, but I had to have something because I was starving. So on that note, I hope you found this useful. And next video on Friday, might do another live stream. I don't know. There's so much to talk about. Thank you very much for joining me. And I shall see you in the next one. And until then, how do I stop this? Keep it real and keep smiling. You know what? My button is, there's no button here to say, normally there's a button that says stop stream. I'll just close the browser. All right, guys. Ciao, ciao.